Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Julie Davidson, welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I'm excited to have you here. How are you this beautiful morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Well, let's jump right in. Julie Davidson, if you recall, works with our team on issues around insurance. She is based here out of Sheridan, Wyoming, and is the person we consult for information about insurance things, about all different types of insurance. And Julie, today I would like to talk about trends in the insurance industry. So there are a lot of things going on. Things are changing fast, as they are with so many industries. And why don't you bring us up to speed on what's going on and how they impact us?
Okay, sure. I'd be happy to. So kind of a common thread that I've seen with many carriers is the change in underwriting use of technology. What I mean by that is the use of drones, the use of satellite imagery, all types of things they have access to now that we didn't in the past, or for many years, even after it was available, it wasn't being utilized.
Yep.
And I've seen a shift with the company I work with, and I've talked to other carriers, people that I'm, friends with or associate with, and they're all saying the same thing. So what that looks like in a lot of cases, especially for farm ranch customers that have been insured a long time, underwriting has access to basically view your entire property. So were we hiding things? No, not intentionally, certainly. But I'll give you an example. And I see this on a lot of farm ranches that I've insured in the past and currently, where folks, it didn't even cross their mind that clear over on that 80 that they never go to, and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. They leave it alone for hunting or whatever. There's an old structure there, like an old home or something like that. And they never mentioned it to their insurance agent. And we certainly, we don't go around the entire 100,000 acres or whatever they have. And they don't have any intention to insure it because they would certainly not rebuild it. They just haven't gotten around to tearing it down yet. A structure like that, if it is discovered, if there's a survey done, which most companies do randomly every 5-10 years, whatever, if there's a survey ordered, they're now using that technology, and that structure could be identified as a liability risk. If it's an old home that might attract people that want to go in and snoop around, if it's accessible from a road or easily seen from the road, all of those factors are now being brought to light, and you may get a notice saying, hey, we detected there's another structure that we haven't accounted for, because you don't have to insure all of your buildings on a farm ranch policy, but you do have to provide photographs of the ones you're not insuring. And if it was an old structure, like an old barn, that wouldn't be an issue. But if it's a home that looks like, it could be livable or could be enticing someone to go in and snoop around or whatever, that does pose a whole different liability risk. So
Sure. Okay.
Companies are using the technology available.
Good. And Google Earth and all those things give you, even without showing up and running a drone around, I mean, it's pretty easy to find buildings on a Google Earth.
It is. And I have used that a little bit just for my own curiosity. And I do find that here in Wyoming, Google Earth is not updated.
Yeah, it's a few years old. That's right.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. So, but they definitely do use it. And I think in, closer to metro areas, which we don't have any, it's updated a lot more often.
Yeah. Very good. All right. That's one thing to be aware of. So just make sure we're sort of staying up to date on all of that stuff. And like you say, it's easy to forget about those things. There's kind of a salt shack on a ridge over you ride by it twice a year kind of thing and sort of forget about
right.
that.
And even those things might be identified, and your underwriting department may say, hey, what is this building? And it might be totally fine. Take a picture of it, submit it, say it's a salt shack, no power to it. It's perfectly fine. But they are wanting those identified. So that's good to know. And then the other technology thing that I am seeing a lot of, kind of on a different note, every company seems to have an app available to their clients, and it's a great tool. Me personally, I'll give you the example of my app use. One time, the insurance person, got pulled over and could not find my coverage card.
Oh, I've been here.
That was awesome. So come to find out, I also, am not thrilled about being tech savvy and using apps. So I'm like, well, I hope my State Farm app works. I haven't logged in forever. I had no idea what my login was. So I pull up the app and lo and behold, you don't have to log in to get your coverage card. So
Right.
it saved me. And thankfully I got a warning only, but they're a great tool. You can look at with most companies, you can look at your premiums, you can look at and double check your coverages, you can change your payment method, all of those things. So they're definitely a great tool. But what I don't recommend using them for is doing things like trying to do a vehicle change or trying to turn in a claim. If you are paying an agent, if you're getting your coverage through an agent, you are paying that person to be the expert for you. Not everyone wants to be the insurance geek. We're weird and I enjoy it thoroughly, but not everyone does. So why not use the counsel of the person you're paying for your coverage? And I'll give you an example. Over the weekend, a lot of times folks will have an accident Friday night. It's a jarring experience, especially if there's a lot of damage or injuries or anything like that. So I fully understand the propensity to, gosh, I got to do something. I'm going to go on and file my claim. Well, the instance over this past weekend, there was an accident and our insured was not at fault in the accident. The other person was at fault. They were ticketed. So there is no reason for a claim to be submitted on our insured's policy. Okay?
Oh, interesting. Okay, because it's the other person's policy.
Correct.
Unless
okay, yep. The other person is not insured, and we can talk about that in a moment. But
been through that too. Yes.
Yeah. So the detriment of doing that, we can't, and any company cannot reverse that claim once it's been submitted. It is going to show on your loss history. And even though it'll show zero amount paid, the frequency of claims still affects your insurance score. So you don't want to have unnecessary claims on there. And if you're using a company that does not have an agent for you to counsel with, still try to find a way to get advice from whatever company that you're paying before you turn a claim in. There's really no urgency to do it within, 48 hours or whatever. So my advice would be take the time, don't turn in a claim over an app or without having a conversation with your agent.
Okay. And again, you want to leverage that agent's expertise to do that as skillfully as possible, basically. Make the best claim you can, right?
Correct.
Okay. With the least an impact on your long-term insurability, cost, et cetera.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, I think a lot of times people don't realize, this is kind of shifting subjects here a little bit, but a lot of times people don't realize that, like, if I personally am at fault in an accident, I have the option to pay for that out of pocket. And I'll give you an example. I've had many youthful drivers. I'm on my last one. Thank you, Lord. But if I have a youthful driver who's expensive anyway, just because they're a youthful driver, and they cause an accident, it's going to have to be a pretty significant amount of damage for me to not just pay that out of pocket. Because I do the math on what that's going to do to my premium. Right now, that may disqualify me for a liability umbrella. If there's any other infractions on the youthful drivers or my record. So
is that something our agent can counsel us on also? If we call and say, look, I've got this, it would be, here it's X amount of dollars of damage. Here's what the claim would be. Here's what my deductible is. Let's weigh that around. Can they help us with that?
That is a very good question. And they absolutely should be counseling you on that. But keep in mind, if you are at fault in the accident, the coverage for the other person's damages or injuries are coming from your liability coverage, which does not have a deductible.
Right.
You would have a deductible only for the damage to your own car.
Okay. Got it. But again, that's something our agent should be able to help us with.
Yes. And hopefully when you put your coverage in place, those things are explained, but
yeah,
that doesn't always happen. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Good. What else? What should we be thinking about?
Again, on the topic of deductibles, I see people all the time, and I know in Wyoming and Montana specifically, and I think Idaho as well, the comprehensive coverage is the most expensive coverage because we have so many critters anxious to jump in front of us. And I'll see people all the time and their premium maybe looks a little astronomical. I'm like, what is going on? And I get to looking and they have a zero deductible for comprehensive coverage. That is the most expensive coverage in most states in the Rocky Mountain West.
Okay, and so let's just make sure we clarify how the deductible works. So if I get in an accident, explain what happens as far as who pays and how things start.
Okay. Are you in an accident like with another vehicle?
No, like a
deer hit.
Example, yeah.
So if you hit a live deer that has crossed your path somehow, your comprehensive coverage would be the coverage that would apply. And comprehensive covers any act of nature. So the deer hit, coyote hit, coons, any type of animal, hail damage, tree falls on the car. We've had claims for people coming through the Wind River Canyon and their car was literally sandblasted by a gust of wind. So all kinds of acts of nature.
Falls off the side of a canyon wall, yeah.
Exactly, yes. So your comprehensive coverage would apply to that type of damage. And a lot of people will have that zero deductible because they don't want to pay for a new windshield. And with some companies, your comprehensive deductible applies to any glass damage.
Okay.
Some companies let you have a separate deductible for glass damage. So those are all things to weigh. And, before I made that decision, if I wasn't sure, like if you got a new car that has all the bells and whistles and the little things that flash at you in the windshield and all of those things that make them expensive, just contact a glass company and give them your VIN number and ask them what would be the replacement cost of my windshield if I don't use insurance for it. And what would be the replacement cost of my windshield if I do use insurance?
And usually there's a discount, right?
It will not be the same price. So I would weigh that. And is it worth it to you to pay whatever the premium is you're paying constantly for that comprehensive coverage just to avoid paying $800 down the road? And a lot of times that math does not make sense.
Yeah. Okay, but again, if we have an accident, let's say we hit a deer, so between Dayton and Ranchester, I think somebody hits a deer in the wintertime there. It's 3 days a week at least, right? So we're driving along, we hit a deer. When we go to if we make an insurance claim and we have a $0 deductible, that means the insurance company pays the first dollar of repair costs. So let's say we've smashed out the little plastic headlight assembly, that thing's worth $300. $1, the insurance company pays for all the replacement. If I have a $500 deductible, then it means that I pay the first $500 of repairs, right? So if it's a $300 repair, then I pay $300. The insurance company pays nothing, even if I've made a claim, right?
Yeah. And that's why if you're asking me, if I'm insuring you, you're not going to be turning a claim in without talking to me, is the hope. Because I'm going to advise you, again, there's always an urgency for people because, my gosh, this has happened. It's devastating. I got to get busy doing something towards resolving it. And I totally understand that. But I just tell people, take a breath, go get an estimate. It doesn't cost you anything to get an estimate for the damages.
Yep.
And then let's talk. Because if you have a zero deductible and you get an estimate, I mean, nothing is under $500 anymore. But let's say you go get an estimate and it's $300 in damage. Why on earth? I mean, I would never not pay that out of pocket. And then I would be asking myself, why am I doing this zero deductible? Because the importance and the weight of claim frequency is much stronger than it used to be as affecting an insurance score.
Sure. All right, but let's go to one other situation, which I've seen a number of times, which is, let's say it's a $550 repair and I have a $500 deductible. Now I'm going to pay the first $500. The insurance company is going to pay $50. And then, like you say, it goes on my claim history. Like, even if it's $800. Now, if it's a $20,000 repair, the $500 deductible makes all the sense in the world, right?
Absolutely.
But
yes.
if it's like, man, I'm not actually getting that much, and what it's going to cost me in premiums because my claim history has changed is going to be probably much greater, right?
Not necessarily. If you have no claims and you hit a deer and you turn in a comprehensive claim, because people have the mindset, and I think for many years, agents were kind of creating this mindset that comprehensive claims don't really count against you. They're not your fault. You couldn't have prevented the hailstorm or the deer hit or whatever. And I think that used to be somewhat true. And we've moved away from that. Do they specifically make you a bad risk? They do not. But if you are constantly turning in claims, that does affect your rate substantially,
Right.
even if they're all comprehensive claims. And people don't realize that even towing coverage, like if you have emergency roadside assistance, those towing claims count, not, I won't want to say against you, but they count as a comprehensive claim. So I personally would not want to get that $50 payment from my insurance and be like, oh, well, gosh, that worked out well. And then the following week, we have a hailstorm and they're replacing the vehicle. And that's my second claim within a month. That's not going to do good things for me.
Yeah. And from the insurance company's perspective, yeah, you can't prevent the hailstorm, but if you had your car parked in the garage, well, now the insurance company's not paying any money out. So from their perspective, that you parking in the garage during a hailstorm is a real good move.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So that's good. And I want to talk more about deductibles and premiums in another visit, but trends in the industry. There's one other thing we talked about before about if we are going to transition coverage. I'd like to cover that today if we can. So if I'm changing policies, or tell us a little about what we want to think about there.
Yeah. So eligibility is really becoming a factor for many carriers just because of the shift in the insurance climate with the amount of claims, the dollar amount of claims, all the natural disasters that are not getting any less frequent. So you cannot assume that because you have coverage in place right now, that switching to a different carrier, that you will automatically be eligible. So if you are switching, you want to make 100% sure that you have proof of coverage being in place and that your policies have all moved through and succeeded through the underwriting process and it's a done deal before you cancel your existing coverage.
At Ranchite LLC, we believe your ranch deserves more than just survival mode. You deserve to thrive. Our experienced accountants and business coaches will help you get control over your financials so you can focus on what you do best, running the ranch. We offer a comprehensive process that includes bookkeeping, consulting, and even training tailored to your needs. Don't let your financials slow you down. Visit ranchritellc.com to schedule your free consultation and let Ranchite take care of the numbers so you can take care of the rest of it.
Okay. And that gap in coverage deal is kind of a big deal, right? That comes up a lot in questions with insurers.
It is a huge deal. So to stay on the insurability piece for just a moment, a lot of people are like, well, that stinks because I don't want to, if it takes 3 weeks for my policies to move through underwriting, I don't want to be paying for coverage at both places for that 3 weeks or a month.
Right.
The good thing is carriers have to give you the option to backdate your cancellation up to 30 days.
Yeah.
So there's really no risk in waiting for that. You will get your unused premium back from them.
Okay.
What you just brought up, the gap in coverage, especially on farm ranch, homeowners, auto coverage, do not have a gap in coverage. The only time it does not truly affect you negatively would be on your auto coverage. Most companies have a little bit of grace. If your premium expired 10 days ago and your carrier was not responding to you, you had no idea until you called to say, hey, why didn't my payment come out of my account? And they said, oh, well, you were canceled, 10 days ago. Didn't you get your letter or whatever? Something like that. Most carriers can kind of explain in the underwriting notes why there was a gap in coverage. And if they're short-term like that and there's truly an honest reason for it, that can be worked through.
Okay.
But you don't want to, especially I see it a lot with youthful drivers because they don't understand how the insurance process works and they haven't been driving, which that again is something we can work through. If you haven't been driving uninsured for the last 3 months while you didn't have coverage, that oftentimes can be shared with underwriting and not count against you. But you can't just not pay your bill and then keep driving around, crossing your fingers, and then come get a reasonable premium. It's not going to happen.
Okay. And there are cases too. We talked about the situation where maybe you're changing coverage. There are cases where you are insured currently. You maybe cancel your insurance because you think you're going to a new policy with a different company or whatever. that doesn't work out, and then you actually can't go back and get the insurance that you had before, right? I've heard of a couple of those types of
Yeah.
cases.
And that's why you don't cancel your existing coverage until you have other coverage in place.
And
for
it's
sure.
established. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Yep.
All right. Great. What else?
Just one more piece on that replacing coverage. You need to make sure whatever agent you're speaking with or what other carrier you're speaking with, that they can confirm for you eligibility of your location. Most carriers have a report they can run using the physical address that assigns, it evaluates the earthquake risk, it evaluates the wind hail risk, and the wildfire risk. So they should be able to tell you, yes, you live in an insurable location.
Okay. Very good.
And if they can't, they may not know what they're doing, so go to a different agent.
Okay, good. And what if you live in an area that isn't insurable?
Well,
This may be a much bigger topic, but
well, I mean, your choices a lot of times are either to pay astronomical premiums for someone who will write where you live, but if you're absolutely not insurable, you're just looking at self-insuring.
okay. And what are some examples of places that would not be insurable? And it does vary company by company, right? So
It does. And
Yep.
I will tell you, for instance, our little community here in Wyoming of Story. Some of it is in a very high wildfire risk area, not insurable. I wouldn't say not insurable, but with most companies, if it's insurable, well, let me back up. Most companies are not even writing in that community anymore. But if
Sure.
they are,
Especially
some of
not
the
after last year, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Some of the addresses will have a very specific list of requirements that have to be met for it to even be considered. Could you make all of those requirements correct and still be declined? Absolutely. And then there are addresses, physical addresses that fall outside of that wildfire risk map that have the normal homeowners underwriting requirements, which are not as stringent at all.
Okay. So just to give a quick picture there as an example, Story, Wyoming is, at the base of the Bighorn Mountains and kind of a little ways upslope. And so you guys basically have pine trees almost all through town, right? I mean, there are trees everywhere, and those trees are connected to the greater sort of Bighorn National Forest, which is a huge continuous span of trees that runs, much further from my house to your house, which is 20 miles or so. But, really the whole thing. And so as an example, last summer, we had 100,000 acre wildfire on the forest above both of our houses, 20 miles apart. But my house is separated from the trees by basically a mile of short grass. And I assume if you're in like their houses in Story, that would be, if you were a squirrel, you could go tree to tree from there all the way up to the top of the Bighorns, right?
Yeah, I think you could.
Okay. So just to give an idea, so from an insurance company's standpoint, right, that is, if we have another big wildfire, that's a huge risk because there's no disconnect in the fuel between the forest and the houses. Whereas there are other addresses in Story that are further downhill that kind of like my house are, they're a mile or more away from trees. Well, it's a lot easier to stop a fire with a mile of grass between than it is with trees touching the forest and touching the roof of your house.
Right.
Okay. The same would be true for flood risk. If you are down next to the river, all right next to, I assume on these houses I see in the coast of California on cliffs over the ocean, that sort of thing. Like sometimes nobody's going to touch that, right?
No.
Okay.
And why I would never do that personally. I don't trust the ocean enough to assume it's not going to eat the bank away eventually. But back to your initial question about if you live in an area that is not insurable, and I'll tell you, a lot of farm ranch customers are looking at that. A lot of carriers will not write a farm ranch that is not within 10 miles of a responding fire department.
Right. Another big one. This comes up on ours.
There's a lot of farm ranches that are not within 10 miles of that. And a lot of companies used to be pretty lenient, which it irritates me because underwriting in general, those folks, a lot of them do not grasp the fact that, yes, we all live in the boonies out here 30 miles out, but we're a community out here. My neighbor, John, has his own fire truck. And the keys are in it all the time. If he's not home, we go get the fire truck. Or, Jim has a water tank. Or, everybody has a great response if anybody's on fire. So they used to give weight to that, and they used to value that, and they just have stopped. So if you are one of those folks that are in a situation where you cannot find a carrier, I would exhaust things. And I'm glad to help people with this through the consulting, but you can broaden your search through brokers, which in those situations, they represent many companies. So they're going to know, this is my one company I got left that you might have a chance with. And then let's say that fails and that company will not write you either. I can provide all kinds of mitigation information, preparedness information, all the steps that you can take to really limit not just your fire risk, but water damage. People are away, and there's a lot of things you can do to help mitigate that risk yourself if you're going to be faced with self-insuring.
Yeah. Okay. And I think like some of those you mentioned, some policies would have a requirement that, for example, you clear brush and trees back away from your house by X number of feet, right? That's one I've seen a number of times.
Yep. There's that one. And then a fairly recent one is to have a 5-foot hard space perimeter around the home.
Yep.
And that hard space can have zero vegetation in it.
Yep.
No,
so it's like a gravel or concrete.
Yes, exactly. And then there oftentimes has to be, and this is a big factor in communities like Story, there has to be multiple ways in and out, at least 2 ways in and out, and it can't be driving over Piney Creek.
Yeah, right.
It has to be a way that a fire engine is willing to go.
Yeah, good. And then I think one other thing we'd run into in the past with fire was you actually can become some sort of branch of the county fire or city fire department, right? So at one point in Utah, that was an issue where we could become
your own unit, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And then that changed how the insurance worked.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So those are all good responses. We're kind of running up on time. What else do we want to talk about today? Anything?
I think that was about it that I had notes on.
All right. Sounds good. So just so everybody knows, for our customers, again, Julie is available to talk about these things, help you sort of navigate some of these issues. If you are having trouble or have just general questions, you're happy to answer those. Julie, where do people get a hold of you?
The easiest route would probably be to send me an email, and that is Julie Davidson, HCCC@gmail.com.
Awesome.
That stands for High Country Coverage Consulting.
Very good. In Story, Wyoming. I love it.
Dayton, Wyoming. You're my neighbor, John.
Yeah, good. All right. Sounds good. Well, you have a wonderful day, and we will look forward to talking again soon. Thank you, Julie.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.